Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to discuss the way Labour seem to have set a trap for Sunak, which he dutifully walked into at the TV debate on Tuesday night. We're going to have to wait a little while to see whether the trap worked, and it may well be that Labour have more work to do in the coming debates, but they've certainly given themselves the scope to kick away Sunak's only remaining hope for this election. So, sorry I couldn't do a video on the debate itself. I had to go to bed immediately afterwards for a very early start to London. I'm going to be discussing what I was doing there in another video when I get time. But one thing which did emerge from the debate was a Labour trap revealing itself the next day. We didn't know at the time. Actually, you watched that debate, so well, that was a shambles and Starmer didn't do particularly well. And then the next day it was like, oh, I see. And this centres around Rishi Sunak claiming that Labour would raise every household's taxes by £2,000. He repeated this line multiple times before Starmer finally decided to shut it down. Now, I could complain that the host should have shut it down, given that it has been formally debunked already. And I'd certainly argue that Starmer should have shut it down much earlier, and I still think that. However, at the time, there was something we didn't know. But first, why is Sunak's claim a lie? Now, there are actually three dodgy elements to Sunak's claim. Not all of them are considered beyond the pale. They're all dishonest, but not all of them are considered politically dishonest. For example, in arriving at this figure, Sunak's political advisors decided to make up a load of Labour spending figures based on spurious assumptions in order to make it look like Labour's policies will cost more than they really will. Now, this wasn't actually the big problem with what Sunak did, because political parties do this all the time. They're always making spurious assumptions about the spending plans of their opponents, and it is considered just part of the rough and tumble of politics. Why is it considered acceptable? Because even real spending plans are based on spurious assumptions. You know, if you take the budget announced by Hunt in March, for example, it made assumptions about the level of borrowing and GDP growth over a 5-year period. I mean, if that sounds mad, it's because it is mad. So all spending figures are essentially a work of fiction to an extent, admittedly not a deliberate work of fiction. At least you're giving it your best guess for a budget. So you could argue deliberately making weird assumptions is extra dishonest, but, you know, it is still considered fair political game. A second level of misinformation was that Labour's spending plans would require taxes to be raised on every household by £2,000. Now, they arrived at this figure by going, well, we think Labour's spending plans cost this much above the level of taxation they've talked about, and we've divided that by the number of households. Now, this is misleading because taxation isn't evenly applied to households. In fact, the only household tax is council tax. So unless they're trying to suggest that council tax is going to go up by £2,000 each house after the election, then, you know, it's misleading for that reason. But the other reason is, you know, Labour are making a lot about removing tax breaks. Well, tax breaks don't affect many households at all. Some of them don't affect any households because they're corporate tax breaks. You know, but in terms of households, most households don't get tax breaks. I'm not getting any tax breaks. You're probably not getting tax breaks. We're not rich enough. And some of the spending plans will use borrowing as well, which, as long as you're spending it on capital investment, you don't even pay that back in taxes in the future because the growth it will generate will cover it. So we don't need to pay taxes at any point for that. However, even this is not considered a political lie. Using statistics in obviously dodgy ways is actually considered fair game in politics. It's dishonest, but it's considered fair game. It's why I often say there's a difference between honesty, as we understand the term, and political honesty. But where Sunak definitely did lie, really clear cut, no arguments, and lied in a big way, he kept insisting that the figure was arrived at by independent Treasury officials. Sunak was claiming that the figure was not politically motivated. This is a lie. And Labour had the proof. If Sunak had saved this lie for the TV debate, he probably would have gotten away with it. But because he'd already given it a trial run in the past, Labour had approached the Treasury for confirmation. And as a result, in their hot little hands, they had a letter from the most senior civil servant at the Treasury who made it crystal clear that civil servants were not involved in these costings at all. Further, that James Bowler, who's the permanent secretary at the Treasury, had reminded ministers not to say that civil servants had produced these figures. So a letter which not only proves that it was not independent Treasury officials, but that ministers had been told to stop repeating the lie. And that will include Sunak himself, of course. So not only was Sunak saying something that was untrue, but he and other ministers who told the same lie knew it was untrue because they've been told. And now here's why this matters. So one thing that Starmer did do consistently was call out the fact that Sunak is trying to erase the past 14 years of Tory government. Oh, ignore what we've done, he's saying, just focus on my promises for the future. So Sunak is not standing on a record. Now, as a politician without a record of delivery, all you have is trust. You depend on voters believing that what you say is true or broadly true. But now Labour have really clear proof that Sunak is a liar. And it they've got him trapped on one lie. And it's so easy to prove as well. At the next head-to-head, Starmer can walk into that debate with a letter paper clipped to his tie. And if anyone says, oh, what have you got there? Oh, what have I got here? Let me show you what I've got here. And I think Starmer knew about the letter and his team chose to publish it the next day because he could have produced the letter in that debate and he didn't. Now, it is possible that he genuinely didn't know about it. The letter was only a couple of days old and it wasn't sent to Keir Starmer, it was sent to Darren Jones, who's Labour's shadow chief secretary of the Treasury. It's conceivable that he may have thought, oh, we've got them now, but didn't think he needed to bother Starmer's team with it ahead of the debate. It may just not have been sent to him in time. However, when Starmer was asked about this yesterday, he was asked, did you know about the letter for the debate? He wouldn't actually answer. Now, it is possible that the reason he avoided the question was because he hadn't actually personally seen the letter, but he couldn't be certain that his office hadn't received it. And if it's proven that his office had received the letter in time, he is deemed, he can try and argue, well, no one told me about it, but that sounds dishonest. So it is possible. But I think it's more likely he knew about the letter and deliberately kept it back until Sunak told the lie in a way more public setting than PMQs. And so a TV debate that was a complete shambles objectively and where you couldn't in all honesty say Starmer performed well has now been turned on its head. I still say Starmer made unforced errors, but it's also clearly the case that they played an absolute blinder against Sunak. Yesterday, Labour were all over it. The letter formed a key part of broadcast news programmes fact-checking Sunak's claims and having to call him out over it. And there's more people watch those programmes than read the Tory press. On social media, Labour were parading their proof that Sunak had lied and then asking the follow-up question, what else is he lying to you about? Just to give one example highlighting how devastating this was, Tory candidate Kevin Hollingray, he posted what he claimed was the full breakdown of Labour's spending plans and how it's going to result in these £2,096 extra per household taxes. And he said again that it was produced by independent, impartial Treasury officials. His words. His tweet as of this morning has not only been community noted like all the others, but it's got 118 likes and 1.6 thousand comments. Now, on Twitter, when you get more comments than likes, that's a bad sign. Because people commenting might be commenting in support, but they can often be commenting in disapproval. So usually if people comment in support, then there's a good chance they'll like it as well, right? So if you get more comments than likes, it's a sign that your tweet's a bad one. When you get over 10 times as many comments as like, oh, you done goofed. Now, like I say, for a politician to win support, they need one of two things, preferably both. First, a record of delivery. Even though the Tories have been in power for 14 years, they don't have that. Even in 2019, they didn't have it. Johnson admitted that Cameron and May had failed, but he would be different. So he tried to dismiss their record of failure by going, yeah, he admitted it. Yeah, it's failed. It's all gone badly, but I'm different. I've got this different plan. Sunak's trying the same trick. He's not trying to stand on a record of delivery. He's trying to stand on a record of, but I'm going to do things differently. So then you need the second thing. If you've got no record, like Starmer doesn't have a record right now. he's been in opposition. So you need that plausibility. Can voters believe what you say? Will they have enough faith in you? Boris Johnson managed it. He had a fair few headwinds, but he managed it. Labour now have the means to stop Sunak having it. Doesn't mean Labour have already beaten him. And anyone watching broadcast news or active on political social media will probably have seen this, but that's not enough, people. They need to make this stick in the upcoming TV debates. Angela Rayner's representing Labour this weekend with their sort of all-party ones. She may make mention of it, unless Labour want to save it as a personal attack on Sunak, because Sunak won't be there either. So, but Starmer will definitely need to stick it in his next head-to-head with Sunak. And the advantage Starmer has, apart from the proof he needs, which is always very useful for a lawyer, is that Starmer doesn't have to make headway in these debates. He can actually spend time in the debates pushing this. Like, although I didn't think Starmer's performance was great. I think it's impossible to really say, oh yeah, that was marvellous. It wasn't as bad as some say, because some people thought it was bad from the point of view of attracting support. We didn't really say anything, did he? He didn't really say anything. He didn't have to. Starmer didn't go on that TV debate to draw up support. He doesn't need extra support. He needs to not lose the support he already has. He's playing a defensive game. It's Sunak who needs to make gains. So Starmer would be well advised, and I'm sure he is, to use this letter heavily at the next debate in order to prevent Sunak gaining traction on anything. Well, he lied about this. What's the point of arguing with any of these mad policies he's coming out with when we can't believe he means any of them? He said he'd get the waiting list down. They went up. He threw his weight behind the wasteful Rwanda plans cost £500 million and then didn't implement it. Now we have proof that he lies to the public for political advantage. Why would anyone listen to anything he says now? That can be Starmer's line to pretty much anything to do with Sunak at the next debate. It's why there are some who think Starmer deliberately didn't counter Sunak when he first mentioned the line in the debate, because he wanted Sunak specifically to keep repeating this independent Treasury officials line. And then once he felt he'd done it enough, then he was going to go, right, I'll deal with it now, and then we're going to deal with it properly tomorrow. A classic case of don't interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake. Now, this is possible. I don't think that's obvious. I still personally think counter it immediately anyway, because Sunak carried on with it even then, regardless. But it is possible. But what I definitely do think, what I absolutely accept, is it was absolutely strategic not to properly shut it down, because Starmer could have shut it down more effectively even when he did counter it. He could have simply said, look, it's really simple. We guarantee not to raise the taxes of any ordinary household. Our focus is on removing tax breaks and investment, not taxing already overstretched families. He could have said that. He didn't. Labour have pushed that message yesterday, but not in the debate. Why not? Carelessness? Doesn't seem likely. It's looking like another masterclass, and that people have underestimated Starmer's game plan on Tuesday evening. Because again, they thought he was there to try and win support when actually he wasn't. He was just He was just there to maintain support and to remove Sunak's. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for further content and click the like button. You can also sign up for memberships if you'd like to support the channel further. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'll see you later.